Hi folks, it is that time again. November's free marketplace content is here. Whether you want to paint the town red, pink, green, blue, or yellow, or set up shop in a Gothic castle, we've got you covered and then some. Check out this month's free content at unrealengine.com/feed. Every year, we highlight some of our favorite student projects in our student showcase. This year's reel features projects from Unreal academic partners worldwide. The Unreal Academic Partner Program recognizes universities and school programs that have committed to providing educational opportunities in training the next generation of real-time 3D creators. Get the full credits on the forums. Unreal Fest 2023 was full of notable announcements, showcases, and more. Get a glimpse into the latest and greatest across our community showcased in the Unreal Fest 2023 sizzle, and see for yourself how they are pushing creativity and the future of entertainment forward using real-time technology. Last but certainly not least of the sizzling hot content launch this week, we are proud to introduce some of the top films created for the Shorts India program. Watch the sizzle and individual shorts in full on the Shorts India program YouTube playlist. Moving over to this week's community spotlights. Are you ready for a cosmic adventure? Stardust Collective have announced the release date for their hilarious action-adventure ship management VR cockpit game. Wishlist Ziggy's Cosmic Adventures on Steam and follow along on the forums. Next, take a trip to a cityscape inspired by the streets of Paris by 3D and environment artist Amandine Rubini. Starting with Blockout, they crafted props and architecture, decals, trim sheets, vertex painting, and more to bring the scene to life. Let them know what you think of Inspired Paris over on their art station. Continuing their journey into a medieval fantasy setting, Glow Production showcases their latest short film. This fantastically composed and crafted short will leave you on the edge of your seat. Watch this masterpiece on their YouTube channel in full and deep dive behind the scenes on the 80-level breakdown. Thanks for watching this week's news and community spotlight.
Hi, and welcome to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I'm your host, Amanda, today, and we're super thrilled to welcome the team from Motorica and some additional artists and team that leverage their tools. So welcome Simon, Joel, Adam, and Theodore. And I think
Thank you.
before we totally dive in, they've brought a really awesome trailer that we're going to play for you first, so you all have an idea of what we're actually speaking to, and then we'll dive right in. Beautiful. Well, Simon, you want to tell us a little more about what you all do?
Right. Yeah. So I'm Simon Alexanderson. I'm a CTO and co-founder of Motorica. And Motorica is actually a spin out of research at KTH, which is the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. And we have been doing like a lot of different synthesis works lately. I have a background in motion capture, and we are actually at the speech lab, and then we could combine speech technology and motion capture technology to bring kind of the next level of generative AI animation and then now we have tools that are integrating in Unreal, and you can do generative AI animation within Unreal. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, really,
so that was like
really
my short
powerful
intro.
tools. Yeah. Well, we're gonna go around.
Right. So let's go around. Like we have Theo here from Motorica, and then we have Adam and Joel, who have been using our tools for production. So maybe Theo, you could continue after me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon. First of all, I'm very glad to be here, so thank you for inviting us. My name is Theodore Nikolov, and I have dabbled with creating the Unreal Engine plugin for Motorica from the beginning, with a lot of iterations from Simon, a lot of back and forth, figuring out UI, figuring out how user workflows would go, and also we had a lot of feedback from things like Discord community and people like Adam and Joel who used our plugin. So I have essentially got a programming background. I did some mocap during my master studies in the Netherlands. So I'm mostly equipped with a sort of animation background, but I dabble quite a bit in software engineering as a whole, and also do that a bit on the side as a freelance. So I will get into the more technical bits a bit later, so I'm very glad to be here again.
All right, yeah. My name is Adam Söderfors. I'm a light and environment artist. I work currently at RevStudio. The way I got in contact with Simon and Motorica was when I was working at Ritualen. They asked me to do a trailer for them. So I started testing their tool, and it was very easy, even though I'm not an animator. So it's really fun to experiment with. I'm excited to talk a bit about it.
And I'm Joel. I work as a project manager in VFX. I've been working a little bit in all over film industry in general. I'm very much a enthusiast of innovation and tools, so that's kind of how I find my way to use and abuse Motorica as a tool and find different ways to use it. And I introduced it to Ritualen, where I was working at the time, where we had a lot of fun playing around with it and seeing how we could implement it in the VFX workflow. And yeah, now we're here.
Wonderful. Can't wait to see more of that later. I think, Simon, right, we're going to dig into a little bit of the history and the background of Motorica first.
Yeah, sure. So I think this is just like some high-level introduction, just to see kind of where Motorica is, and the high-level the high-level system overview. So I prepared some slides here. So first off, I'm gonna kind of, everyone knows about generative AI today and how it's changing creativity. We've seen so many examples from image synthesis domain like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and DALL-E, and so on. We see how generative AI is changing like speech and music synthesis, text synthesis, of course, like with ChatGPT and everything. But when it comes to 3D motion, there is actually not very much happening there in generative AI. So we're kind of pioneering that field. And 3D motion synthesis is really useful for a lot of different things, like, of course, for game and film and VFX, but also for like city planning, architectural visualizations, and so on. And if you look back and why is generative AI so everywhere today? Well, I think what has happened is that we have, of course, in the research field, we have gotten so much more stronger machine learning models. So that's one part of it. But they're also trained on huge amounts of data for a very long time. But when it comes to the societal impact, it's basically that the results are really getting useful. You can use these results into production. And this leads to kind of a acceleration of the workflows, and you can try stuff out much faster and so on. So if we go to kind of the animation pipelines, traditionally you have all these you need to go through storyboarding, previs, and then when you're done with that, you need to go into a mocap stage and hire actors maybe, and then you have an editing phase, which and all of this takes a long time. So our solution to that is what if we can create some kind of directable AI actors, and you could direct them and get results in just a very short amount of time. And this is some results that we presented at SIGGRAPH this year. So you can see kind of the level of results that we're getting. So you can just feed it your own custom-made path, and you can give it a style, and it will generate very plausible animations for that. Right, so Motorica is now a cloud-based service. We have a cloud API. We have a web interface where you can, it's like a sandbox where you can try stuff out. We have can interact with that with FBX to upload and download animation files. But especially what is super exciting now is that we have this Unreal plugin where you can directly integrate, or you can use Motorica from within the Unreal Engine. And this is what we're going to demo today. We have trained this AI model on huge amounts of mocap data in different styles. Today we do locomotion synthesis, and that's what we're going to demo. But just to give you an idea what the model can do, this is a dance synthesis that we actually presented at SIGGRAPH this year. So this is what it looks like if the AI is given some new music and you just tell it how to dance, or you just tell it to dance to this music. Let's see if we can start this video. And in this example, we trained it to gesture to speech audio. So in this context, you will give it
like it spilled everywhere. I was like, no, and I like picked up not the hamster. He was like, you know, like dying.
Right. So yeah, so that's kind of a brief introduction. Like we have a really powerful AI model built upon diffusion models. And then we have this cloud-based service, and we have the Unreal plugin. And I'm really happy to hand over to Theo, who is going to demo this for you.
Thank you so much, Simon.
Now you're going to do one of the dances for us, right? We're just going to play music and we'll see how it works in live.
Yes, we have the mocap studio in the back here, so.
All right. So what I have currently got on screen is the web interface of Motorica. And this was the initial way for users to generate animations and dabble with generative AI. So what you're seeing here is a viewport with the Motorica character walking in the middle. And on the right, you have a set of controls. So in the top right, we have a set of presets. So you could have your character walk forward. They could maybe do a circle. Or in this case, we have this stop turn preset where the character is moving forward and towards the end he stops. There are some parameters here that we can control. So in this case, we have a speed of 1.5 meters per second. And right at the end, we have specified, okay, make a 180-degree turn, and it's going to start, it's going to look towards the origin from where it began. So the first thing I can do, oh, and of course, yeah, on the bottom, there is also a list of styles. It's like a tree-like structure. We have categorized styles into different categories such as creatures or, for example, soldiers. So there are quite a lot of soldiers that have been recorded in the mocap before. And what we're going to, let's choose a different style, for example. So, let's pick the zombie. This is a very common style that we have demoed in our trailers, in our teasers, and also users who have made YouTube videos making like tutorials, they have also used it quite a bit. So I switch the zombie style, I enable it, and then on the bottom there's this button to generate. We wait a bit, the request is sent to the Motoric server, and when it loads up, when it's all set, it bounces back, and now we have a different animation. So you might be looking at this and thinking, is this a zombie? Does it look like a zombie? Well, what we realize is that maybe if you bump up the speed, make it sort of run, you will get a bit more of that zombie style. And this is in fact what we're gonna do now. I bumped up the speed a bit more, and now it's like flailing. It's like it's running after you, We could of course bump it even more. And this is essentially the cool part, that it's iterative, you mess around, you try and see what works, what doesn't work. You may change the style, you may change these parameters, you could switch to a different preset. And in fact, let's check this circle preset. So we're now not going to do this stop turn motion. Instead, what we're gonna do is sort of like circular motion, as if you're running around some origin point. And you could decrease it by, you could change the speed. You could adjust the turn rate as well. And the cool part is it's really fast. It's easy to be creative and not spend too much time trying to get that perfect animation, because it's already grounded in real life data that it has been captured from like a real actor and mocap studio. There is another cool feature about the styles. So let's pick another style first. So let's get the soldier rifle style. What this style would be is essentially a person who is going to be holding a sort of mimicking holding a rifle. At the moment, it is being delayed, so there is a chance that maybe the communication between the iClient and the server, there is a slight delay. Since this is live, there is a chance that this of course happens. And one thing I can currently try and wait a bit. So I'll give it like a few seconds. No, there we go, it's fine. So it's also possible that the server gets a queue, and while the animation gets generated, it's normal for it to take a bit more time. But now we can see that the character is moving in this same preset path, kind of holding a rifle. And another thing is, now let's pick a different style. Let's go with this injured style. So how does that look like? Let's do another round of generation.
So it looks like you can layer them, right? So it's not just one or the other, but you can sort of layer them to come up with unique combinations as well.
Yeah, exactly. It may not necessarily work the best for every pair of style that you have at your disposal, but some tend to look good. And for example, now I'm showing off the injured style, but if I bump up a sort of mix, let's say about 50-50 between the two. And now what is going to result in is a style that is essentially a mixture of the two. In this case, maybe it's not so clear the difference, so maybe we can bump up more of the soldier style. So I'll move it to 75% roughly and see how that looks like. And again, I want to emphasize that this is an iterative approach, and there is some randomness to the process. So it may look good sometimes, it may not look the best. So you would have to tweak the settings a bit and see what works. This is essentially this whole creative part, and fast iterations kind of enable this to work. So that's essentially for this style, choosing, selection, and mixing. It's also possible in this web interface to upload a path. So instead of relying on these are like straight paths or circular motions, you could upload a AVX file that contains your root motion. So you might have drawn a path in Maya or Blender, keyframed it and exported it. And if, as long as the format is consistent and the skeleton naming scheme, for example, is consistent, you can drop in your own root motion and wait for it to generate with this custom style. And so in our case, we have this sort of U-shaped trajectory that the character is being animated around. And if you are satisfied with the result, you can then download it again in an AVX format. So it's really using a common format that you can plug into any DCC program. So you could like put it in Maya, you could put it in Blender and edit it, or you could even you could import it in Unreal Engine, and you can mess with animations and retargeting all inside Unreal Engine. So that's for this web interface. And now what we're here for is actually the Unreal Engine integration. So the workflow is very similar to what I showed in the web interface, because these controls are very much exposed there as well. So in this case, I will spare all the installation, the settings that are preconditioned to using the plugin. But the most important thing is that you have went on the website, registered, followed the installation instructions for the plugin, which we have provided on the Motorica website. There, try MoStudio Unreal plugin, which leads you to a user guide where you can follow these installation instructions. And once you have set that up, enable the plugin in your Unreal Engine 5 project. What you would normally get is, if everything went well, you get no crashes, no errors, a button should appear in the toolbar of the main level editor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it, and we're going to see the asset editor. We called it Motoric Studio. The name of the plugin is Motorica Studio, and the very first thing represented is this big viewport and a lot of seemingly empty panels in this case. So the first thing that you would need to do once you're here is to connect to the Motorica servers. And currently we have exposed it as a simple login button, as long as your settings are correct. Once you press login, you should have a successful login. And the best indication that this was successful, besides this login successful green text, is that all the styles that we had on the website are now also presented you here in this style bar, where you can mess around and read all the styles. They're sorted alphanumerically. You could also search them. And in our case, we could go for the zombie style again, since I already did it in the web interface. But there is also one more precondition before we get to that. And it is that you need to add an actor to the scene. So for this purpose, we have, it's just a button, add actor. It might be in the toolbar, we might move it somewhere else. With time, we're improving the user experience, like overall UI of the plugin. But for now, it's a simple button on the toolbar. And what this does is it adds the character to the viewport, and you must make sure that you have selected the actor. So if you click anywhere on the scene, you will get the details view and all the properties of this object that you have selected. This is a bit like a shortcut to the main level editor, but this is not exactly the purpose of Motorica Studio, this window. Its primary purpose is keeping an actor like this selected, and then you have your options to generate an animation for them, configure, manipulate the randomness of the animation. You could want the same animation regenerated or maybe a different one by controlling the seed. So now I'm going to pick a style. Let's go with the zombie style. In this case, it's a checkbox. And if we go back to the style mixer panel, which is in this case on the bottom left, we have now this zombie style appeared. So I could remove it if I click it, and now we have no style, but it makes sense to have a style because otherwise you cannot generate anything. So we bring up the zombie style, and since we're in a preset mode, there are other modes as well. Currently we're doing presets, similar to the web interface. On the bottom right, I have specified I want stop turn, which is this preset of walking forward and turning towards the end and stopping. I have specified a speed of 1.5 meters per second and again an angle of 180 degrees towards the end. So I'm just going to press generate animation now. And also switch this. And now we were waiting a bit for the animation to generate. In the timeline at the bottom, you can see now that there is an animation track and an animation clip was inserted into this track. So now if we go back to second 0 in the timeline and we move the camera a little bit and play it back, we can see that the animation is being applied to this character. Now, because my timeline is 10 seconds is not exactly looping the animation correctly, but if it goes towards the end, yes, you can. It's going to loop back. So let's modify the settings a bit again. Let's bump up the speed to 3.5 meters per second. The angle, we could also change the angle a bit to face the camera now. So an angle of 90 degrees seems to be a good option. So regenerate. Wait a bit for the animation to be generated. And now the character has moved a bit further because of the speed being higher. And now we have this animation, yeah. So we could plug in any other style. We could, of course, let's pick the injured style. Let's add this one. We could mix the two styles, similar to what we had in the web interface. Regenerate, the preset settings are the same. And now we have a sort of injured zombie running, or running and then stopping and turning. And this is pretty much what we did in the web. Now it's all in Unreal. And if you're happy with your result, with the animation, then you would go over, save the animation. And now that you have saved it, you could find a folder in the content browser, give it a name. Let's call it zombie stopping or injured zombie. Save. And now we can go, we could minimize the Motoric Studio editor, we could even close it and locate our saved animation in the content browser. And if we open it in full screen or in the animation editor, we can see that it's now similar to any other animation you might have messed around with inside Unreal. You could edit it, you have full access at this point, you could export it as FBX, you could retarget it to other characters. And now you're essentially decoupled from the plugin from Motorica Studio. There is also root motion functionality, so the character can be locked in place if you want to have root motion capabilities in your animation sequences that you want to play back. So that's also there, and you can see the hips are correctly being offset vertically. So the root motion is only locking the XY translation within the game or within the 3D scene. So I'm going to close this, and the next part I want to show off is this sort of keyframe approach, the custom path that we previously uploaded as a file to the web interface. So for this, I'm going to load up a more interesting map. So for example, this starter map, which has quite a few props around. So if I go back now to the editor, what would be nice is if I can when I'm generating my animations to contextualize them within the world that I want them to be generated in. So with this map loaded in the level editor, I would go over to the Motoric Studio and press this like globe icon, which essentially tells the plugin to load the currently loaded map from the level editor and load it in here as well. So I'm going to press this now. And you can see that the same level that we had previously is now shown here. They look very much the same. There is a bit of the viewport that can be cleaned up. So for example, this red bounding box can maybe be improved, but this is at this point primarily used like UX improvements, and it's not critical. It doesn't impact the visuals that much from what I understand. So you might have noticed that our character is also missing. He's not in the scene. And the reason why is because you can bounce back to the prototyping level where we had our character already. So since we already have an animation here, we don't really want to delete it. You might want to go back to this original sort of playground that you were in. So we're keeping that intact. And when you go into this new map, what you would need to do is just add another actor in the similar fashion to before. So I have added a new actor. I could move him a bit around, maybe place him somewhere here. And then I would also need to switch to custom mode. We might rename it to keyframe mode, because essentially what it allows you is to do keyframes on within the timeline and animate the position of the character around the 3D scene. So I'm going to move the character again. And then in this timeline here, I will locate this locomotion actor, as we like to call him, and set a keyframe on the entire transform. So first I'll go to second 0, move the character again because he's locked to 0. There is currently no animation. And once that's done, add a keyframe. And then I have the entire 10 seconds currently I can play with. So I'm going to go to the 10 second in the timeline, move the character somewhere else, for example, over here, maybe make the viewport a little bigger. And if I scrub it, I can see that there is a motion in between. Maybe I decided somewhere in the middle I want another keyframe here, the character rotated a little bit. And maybe here I want to kind of round off this rotation. And let's say that this is the path I want the character to roughly take. So now with my styles, there already I had the zombie ninja style set. I could now just press generate animation. It's going to send a request to the server. It's going to take a bit more than before because now we're generating 10 seconds of animations instead of these 4 seconds of presets. So for the most part, now we need to wait a little bit until the animation has been generated. And this sort of iterative process and speeding up the generative process, essentially getting the animations to be created faster. This is this is at this point some work on the back end that also we're thinking about, as we want to make it seamless and not to have to reduce any technical hiccups that might appear during your ordinary sessions of generating animations. In some cases, you might also need to check if there are any errors. So in this case, I don't see exactly any errors. The animation now is generated. I just got a pop-up in the bottom right. So if I go back to the first or the 0 second in the timeline, play back the animation, and now this character is essentially following the path we designated in our timeline. So maybe this looks a bit slow, maybe it's a bit too
phenomenal.
Theo, I can also say it seems to be a lot of activity on the server. I'm looking at the logs now, and it seems that people watching this stream is really.
Are you all right?
I can imagine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that is kind of. I heard you kind of getting a bit stressed out because of the long server wait times, but it's actually because people are really trying it out now as we're speaking.
It's the perfect
To
opportunity,
flag out,
right?
Yeah, this is stress testing.
they say no, but they're really
To take
quiet.
notes.
I mean, sure. To be honest, like the speed this is going, it still blows my mind. That it's like, oh, I'm testing this, I'm trying this.
Yeah, I was
So
I was initially unsure how fast things would be, but for the most part, they are quite fast, and it's still quite insane that you can do this in like less than an hour. You could have good results at the end. Yeah, so I'm just going to let's assume that this is our animation, that we like what we're looking at. The style is great. Our root motion is great. Something that you can do is you can dabble with like the tangents of each keyframe. So if you want fine-grained control over how the different axes, XYZ axes are being traversed, you could go to each of these. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong actor here. It's you have access to all these tangents, so you could decide to modify the rotation a bit to make it more snappy. So if you need fine-grained control, this is available. It's similar to what you have already in the sequencer and the typical level sequencer, where you do all your like animations and cinematics. So being happy with this, I would save my animation again. Call it root motion. Let's say save, close the editor, and then I go back to find my animation. And similar to before, it's now being played back. The only difference is that now the animation doesn't start from the origin, because we did offset the character a bit in our scene from the origin. But in the future, this could be a little toggle to make sure that the character starts from your first keyframe, for example. And that's for the most part it. I would maybe just briefly show that you can also do retargeting. You can retarget to other characters. So for this, I have prepared a level sequence of a bunch of characters. This map doesn't do it very good justice. It's quite cluttered for the demo, so I will switch the map and reopen the scene. And so here I have like 8-9 characters that are playing back the same animation. In this case, it's a monkey style. So we had an actor that sort of mimics a monkey in the mocap studio. So I'm just going to play it back. And you can see just the animation, it's being applied to all of them. And the cool part is also that root sort of hip height is being considered. So smaller characters traverse less of a distance, and bigger or taller characters traverse a larger distance. It really depends on the hip height here. And there is the UE5 mannequin. So we're shipping some assets in the next version to demo how you can do retargeting to Unreal Engine 5 mannequin. Several Mixamo characters, including the one we saw, I think, in the trailer earlier. There is a metahuman here. Their mesh of the face and the head are separate from the body, so we only provide the body here because getting the entire mesh, it's quite a few megabytes, and it would be best to not have to increase the size of the plugin too much. So you can do metahuman, just swap out the skeleton, and you're good to go. And that would pretty much be it for targeting and the demo of the plugin. So thanks for sticking around.
No, it's super cool. And chat has a lot of questions for you, so I hope you're ready to buckle up for some Q&A if that's
Yeah. Whenever
so so they're wondering, one, where have you sourced it? So is it a lot of they're feeding on some like real actor data that you've been sourced and created these individual styles, or is it the very specific, like, okay, we've done the soldier recording, we've done the zombie recording? Can you talk a little more about where the data itself?
Yeah, I could talk about that,
yes.
because so we have recorded our own data set. Machine learning models in general need a lot of data, and kind of one thing that is special with motion capture data is that it's not easy to come around. Like there's not a ton of mocap data lying around on the internet. So like early on, we decided that no, we shouldn't source other people's data. We should record our own data sets. And that has the additional benefit that we can actually instruct the actors. Like we want to have these styles. We want to have these kind of dance cards or these kind of motion sets that you need for these kind of applications. So we actually looked around also for the out there. So we found people who had been in AAA games, who have been doing like mocap for Game of Thrones and these kind of really high-end productions. So that's something that we are super valuing super hard to hire good talents, because any machine learning model, the data you feed it, the results won't get better than the data you feed it. So if you have like tons of really bad data, you're gonna get bad results. So yeah, I hope that answered that question. I have some slides like later on where we're discussing more of these data
We'll get
issues.
into it, basically, yeah.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we can hold off on some of that till we get into the stuff later. But then they're wondering, is there a way to generate perfect, like looped animations? So, some of them sort of are stopping at the end. And they're wondering if you have some more of like the clear-cut animation loops.
Right, we get that question about some automated ways of doing that, but it's kind of further down the line, because there are so many ways that people do that today already. People are using tools like, well, I think you can even do that within Unreal right now. So we didn't put too much effort in it, but we might, go there in the next couple of releases or something like that. We hope.
That would be amazing, yeah. But definitely understand, right? It's all coming from this live person, and they're not necessarily going to end up in the same spot.
No, not necessarily. But also, it's like it's just some of the motion that needs this kind of looping. It's more the running and the walking. Right. Like then you need a lot of these transitions, like idle to walk, idle to run, and they won't typically be looped. So you can still generate those ones, right?
Let's see. They're wondering, is it possible to create animation in which two or more characters interact with each other? So can you lean on these animations to collide with other animations, or is it, well, I guess that's the other part of it, or is it sort of set as it is?
Yeah, it's this is also something that we really want to do in the future, but currently we have recorded one actor at a time, so they won't be able to be aware of anything else. But we did some research like very recently, more on gesture synthesis with two people talking to each other, and there they are really interacting and reacting to the other person. So it's more of a data problem than it's a machine learning problem, I would say. Or so yeah, look out for that in the future. I'm sure I'm going to say that to a lot of these questions, like yes, in the future.
No, that's okay.
We'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So then also, I would assume. Well, I won't make any assumptions. They're wondering if they can upload their own mocap or animations to the system, or if it's purely based on your data set.
Right. So this is a really good question, and I'm going to show you at the end of the show. I'm going to show you some future work. So this is something that we're currently actively working on, because we get this from a lot of studios, and especially from the more high-end studios, which they have their own mocap data. If you go to like indie studios or like very small studios, they typically don't have their own mocap data. But if you go to kind of AAA studios, they really want to use their own data. So we are developing ways to kind of, it's fine-tuning our AI models. So we have our trained model, and then you can add your data to it and train it for a couple of minutes more, and then you will get the style that you provide. So definitely that's something that we're working on.
That's super cool. That would be really awesome. Let's see.
Joel, I think you're muted if you want to add.
No, I just said I know we have some cool footage as well that's coming a bit later, so that will actually show it in practice, and it's super cool. Just like the potential in it, it's really cool.
Yeah, you need to stay on now to the end. So this is the.
You're all trapped in this with us. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you kind of showed a little bit to this, Tudor, but they're talking about, can you keyframe like individual bones, or could you pose match those keyframes and then generate the gaps between them?
Right. So at the current stage, that's not possible. You can only keyframe the root of the character. But we have talked about this, and it might, in the future we might get to it, because it's reasonable to sort of put these major key points and then try and fill the in-betweens. So at the moment, no, it's not possible. We can only do the root. But if there is more, as long as there are requests, there is a higher chance this does make it in the end. Because if it's something that the community needs, then that makes sense to target.
Actually, this is also like a research topic. You see papers on this at SIGGRAPH or other kind of graphics conferences. So it is something that is really a hot topic in the community. And you can see kind of also how that connects with the kind of in-painting ideas that people from the image community are doing, like that you were doing image. You might swap out a part of the image and then regenerate just that part of it. Like that's something that we want to do also in Motorica, that you will say that this part of the motion is really fine, but I want to regenerate just like some parts in the between. Right. So it's a hot topic, and yes, I think you're gonna see that in Motorica or any other AI animation tools. You're gonna see this. I hope it will be us first.
Something to look forward to. And so I guess the other one is sort of handling transitions. So if you want to do a circle run and then to move to a straight line, that's kind of what you showed off anyway, was that, right, you can sort of set the path and the character will just follow that based on those root animations. So looks like we'll continue on from here. So thank you for the technical demo, Tudor. I know, Simon, you had some more you wanted to go into about that, the research background and a little more into the nitty-gritty behind what's going on here.
Yeah, sure. So I think just like a little bit of the research background, because I think that could be interesting to people here. How come, like, so as I said before, I have a background in motion capture. I have been doing quite a lot of previs in my days, like also in the industry. I've recorded a huge amounts of mocap data for scientific researches or purposes. I think what really happened from the research side was that I met Gustav, who I hope he will be able to pop in this call later on, but he's on a flight right now. But he's like this super genius machine learning expert, and he has been working on generative AI for speech synthesis for ages. And when we kind of met, and I was discussing kind of this animation background that I have, and we were discussing can we kind of use the latest in speech technology and merge these two fields. Then that really hit off. So I'm going to show kind of a little bit of a journey where we started, because motion synthesis compared to speech synthesis, that's like speech has been around for like I don't know, since the 60s or something. But motion synthesis is relatively new, and these generative models are really powerful. So here's like a little bit of our research journey. We started off with a paper at SIGGRAPH Asia 2 years back. I think this was probably kind of the first really good-looking generative AI model for animation synthesis, and this was called MoGlow, and it created quite a stir in the community. And we also have this like a paper in a GitHub repo if you want to look into the scientific details and reproduce the results here. But we could show how a model can create not only one way of moving along a certain path, but it could actually describe a variability of different ways of walking along the same path and moving around. So that was kind of our first breakthrough paper, and it's really a general model that works also with other types of motion than humanoids. So like we had dog data in here, which also produced really nice results. And then we also could apply this to gesture synthesis. So I think gesture synthesis is a field that by then it was just starting out. Not very many papers each year on gesture synthesis, but this is something that's really kicked off since then, and now there is a huge research community doing just gesture synthesis because like gestures are needed for NPCs, for virtual agents, and all of these entities that are in games and different types of places where you need digital characters. So this paper, style controllable speech-driven gesture synthesis using normalizing flows, that also got an award at Eurographics. And then our latest research is called listened noise action, audio-driven motion synthesis with diffusion models. And this we presented at SIGGRAPH, as I told you before. And here we're doing like dance synthesis and also gesture synthesis from within the same model. And I think like these results on, and here you see the locomotion. And here I just wanted to shout out that there is a research data set which is called 100 Styles by Ian Mason. And these really funny looking styles were recorded by him, so that's not Motorica styles. Those are from this 100 Styles dataset. If you're into machine learning, you really like these kind of graphs. If you're not, you maybe, I don't know, you skip past them very fast.
Yeah, you have both, right? In-depth graphs and beautiful videos.
Right. Let's see. Yeah, if you want to look more, you go to our project site here. Listen to noise action. We might put it in the comments later. Oops.
Yeah, we can drop it in chat.
And here also, I just wanted to mention that we have released this dance data set also for scientific purposes. So if you're into that, let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the data recordings that we did. So as I said, this is the raw mocap data from one of our actors, and so this is what it's trained on. It's trained on hours and hours on mocap data. We trained it for about a week on a GPU 3090 NVIDIA card. And then, since we went live with our beta, we have had a really nice traction by both the 3D community and several large studios that has reached out. So we had these influencers, Ask NK, who has really nice videos. You should check out his channel if you haven't already. Also, we had Houdini tutorials made by Parker Coleman at Tip Top Visuals. Check that out if you were into Houdini. And also join our Discord channel at Motorica. And then we have had a lot of talks with Epic, which has been really interesting and fun, with different teams within Epic, like all of the animation teams practically I've been talking to. And then we found Ritual and Rabbit Foot Studios, which kind of segues into inviting them, Joel and Adam, to talk about their experience, because this is all very technical and researchy, but what's really interesting is to see how these tools kind of go into a creative process and how they're adapted to current workflows. So I'm really happy to hand off here to Joel and Adam to kind of show their creative process.
All their stuff.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Show us the shinies.
Well, exactly. It's so cool to see all this, because I know parts of it and we've had discussions, but I've never gotten it laid out in front of me in this way. This is the backstory of Motorica. So I already presented myself earlier. I work in VFX and film, and as such, I've had a lot of interest in fields that kind of shakes things up, and I was deep into the virtual production, and I kind of still am into that scene. We did the test with LEDs. We looked into nerfs, and this was back when I was working a lot with Ritualen, which was mentioned, which is a small VFX studio in Stockholm that has very open minds. They let me do a lot of AI talk in the office, which I appreciated. And as such, browsing through whatever was coming out, reading anything that had SIGGRAPH on it, I found the MoGlow research paper and saw that it was very cool. And it was not just what in it, but actually the potential that was, because this immediately you could see that this could scale up, and it could be if in the same way as the image diffusion or generative images are sort of scaled, if motion could do the same thing, that could be we could have scenes choreographed, we could have previous done, we could have worlds possibly just run by this. So of course I was very excited to just get in contact with these guys, these researchers at the university nearby, and see how could we apply this in what we were doing at the moment. We're working a lot with game cinematics. We're working with the Lord Fallen 2 at that time, if I remember correctly. We're doing some cinematics there and doing a lot of mocap. And mocap is fast, but it still takes time. And sometimes you want to find ways to, as I mentioned, do a previs or something like that, but you want to have someone, a client, perhaps something, you want to try something out quickly. And we started to play with those ideas. What we found by doing this and with the conversations and bouncing with Simon was that this was a very different way of working with animation. As many people who work with actual custom animation and those know that it's very detailed oriented. It's a lot of control. You're moving every finger, everything is kind of there, even if there are like in between some ways now to speed that up. It's very detail oriented. But this was more like directing, I'd say. It's closer to my experience with like directing actors or giving them like, oh, more this and that and walk this way. So we decided to make a full-on test, a trailer, a demo of it, sort of in that vein, which I think we can show, and you will see how it kind of takes the inspiration from directing movies.
Are you kidding me? Pan right. What's up with these guys? Sorry, they're a last-minute addition. Oh, fuck, how do we fix this? We're already running out of budget. Well, I have something new we can try. This is great! Let's see what else we can do. Make them walk more sneaky. Like they have an injured foot. Yes, okay, more happy. More sad. Like a wild predator. Yes, yes, that's it! Like they're walking in quicksand. Now like they're walking in lava. Like they have a big hat. Like they're dinosaurs, but they don't realize they're dinosaurs. Like they have flies laying eggs in their ears. Like they're really smart, but they just don't know what to do with themselves.
I love it so much.
Big shout out to Ritualen, amazing team, and to Martin Lindberg, who made more or less most of this in incredibly short amount of time for something with animation, and this amount of animation that he did in there. I'd say for that sort of project, the animation was maybe the thing that took the least time, which is amazing in a sense. But yeah, so we did this and we were amazed, and we were kind of clear that, okay, this is something very cool. This could be used in so many ways, and it's so surprisingly fast and versatile. Even if it's just focused on locomotion at the moment, it still has the opportunities to add. And when it does, you can do like so much more. So I was on the journey by then and just wanted to see where we could take this. And well, now working with this, we decided to try. We came to the point where basically we were going to do the plugin, the Unreal plugin, and we're going to transfer it there. So we decided that we needed to make a new trailer, a new demo, kind of to show this and introduce new people to it. And this is where Adam over here was brought on, who was also working at Ritualen at the time, and now he works for Rabbit's Foot. And yeah, I'll let you take us into the other trailer, the second trailer we saw in the beginning of the show.
All right. Okay, so yeah, here's a scene. But I kind of just wanted to talk a bit about the process of creating this scene. So we first started with, I started going through the marketplace and looking for interesting environments that I could use. And I think I found around 3 or 4 that were interesting. And then I kind of just started brainstorming some ideas, like what works for this scene, what works for that. And I sent them away to Simon, and Simon chose one that he liked the most. So I got that back, and I forwarded that idea to Adam, same name as me, at Ritualen, that then did the storyboard. So while he was doing the storyboard, I started experimenting with how this tool works, because I've never used Motorica before. So basically what I started doing was...
Just to mention for everyone, this is an important point. So Adam is a lighting and environment artist. So this was our kind of pilot to see, okay, let's go in with like, how low are the threshold can you go in with this if you're trying to set a scene and work as an artist? So let's start, of course, he started with the scene, as you all see, or started with the lighting and setting something beautiful, and then got into the animating part. And it's pretty interesting to see how you started doing this, how your approach was, since it was like, you don't have the schooling of it. It was kind of like, okay, and how did you start it then?
Yeah. So after kind of just making some basic lighting, I just opened the plugin, watched some tutorials on how it works, and then added the actor. I used the custom mode, by the way, the keyframe mode. And I basically just started keying and played around with it, turned it around, and went a bit crazy, I guess. And then I just chose something interesting, like maybe cat, and I generated. And then I did this with multiple presets just to see what fit the storyboard best that I later got back from Adam. You can see. This is a human cat, I guess.
Obviously. So you started out can lead in a sense and give you ideas, it seems.
Sorry, what do you say?
Well, it seems so you sort of went into an explorative mode, kind of getting different ideas and inspiration from the tool itself.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of different names here. Like, I was interested. What is classic zombie in Classic Zombie 2? What is crossover? Just tried stuff out and see what works. And and then of course for the characters, I can mention that I took some characters from Mixamo. Let's see, I have them here. I took the mutant character, because he's big and scary, so it works. And then for the guy being chased, it was just like this paladin. But I also want to show real quick the storyboard that I got back from Adam at Ritual. So this is basically what I worked with. It's very basic, but it's enough. So I started just going through this, creating, organizing in folders and creating sequences and cameras for each shot in the storyboard. I can show, here's like the intro shot. It's very basic movement, and here shot. And now, after doing this and going back to the scene, I feel like the way I organized and put all of this together is a little bit clunky. Probably I could have used like one master sequence and put everything in that instead of having a bunch of different sequences, and I could have had one skeletal mesh actor instead of having a different skeletal mesh actor for every shot. It's a bit much. I realize that now. So yeah.
Sometimes that's the nice thing about just making something, though, right? Like, you still created a scene, and even though it may or may not have been quote unquote the right way, it's the same with folks that start off with like Photoshop and you have like infinite layers, and it's like, well, okay, maybe put those in groups and name them or something. But right, like you still made something that turned out wonderfully. So it's all a process and iteration of growth, but you still did it.
And there's a little bit of a new workflow as well. Like this is something to figure out, because working with animation with these tools, there's no like clear, oh, this is how you'd approach this. There are of course like some baselines you'd go if you have done a lot of animation similarly, but we still see people like playing around with this tool and finding different ways of doing it, and everyone is probably going to do it in their way, and then maybe there'll be a standard way that people figure out. But yeah, it's kind of cool just to have this phase where everything is open. There's no right or wrong, really.
Yeah.
And
kind of also with sorry, what was I gonna say?
I think there was the scene you showed me earlier that was pretty, when they were running around the corner.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this appear shot, this one. So yeah, something I wanted to mention with the animation in this shot specifically, it kind of just worked. The first time that I generated this animation, it just worked perfectly. There's only like, there's one keyframe over here, one keyframe over here, and one keyframe back here behind the camera. And if you look at the big mutant, the momentum of the animation is really, really nice when he like stops against the corner and starts running after him. It feels organic, to me at least. I'm not an animator, again. But yeah. And I kind of wanted to show how I did that. Very simple thing. If I remove it.
Love the behind the scenes. He's just like hiding around the corner. Don't worry about him.
Right.
Chilling.
I basically just had this. I add a keyframe over here. Right, I need to move this. Maybe like 3 seconds. It's a bit tricky targeting the correct actor. And then just over here. And maybe I think I used like ogre or giant. And generate. It should look kind of familiar. Yeah. It's really that simple. Then you just tweak the speed of it, like where should the keyframes be? Should it be a little bit earlier, later? And then that changes the speed of how fast he runs and stuff like that. Yeah.
I can maybe break in and say that, like, you know, when you talked about like making new trailer, and then you were asking like, okay, but who is the target audience for this trailer? And it was so very, very fun to say that, well, you guys are the target audience, so you do whatever would excite you, because we're actually this is actually what we're targeting. You know, studios, mid-sized, small, big-sized studios with, you know, creative people who are excited about Unreal and this kind of cinematic things that you can do, and I think, you know, it's super exciting to see kind of the production quality that comes out of this, and you know, from just like a super small team of, you know, in this case just like one person, and in the last case also. So, you know, you can, right, and you can really go into the storytelling things here. So you also need to, okay, so Motorica today is quite limited in only the locomotion, but you know, it's kind of a interesting thing to say, to also maybe think about what stories do you tell mostly with locomotion type of animations, and these kind of chase scenes seem to work really well. Crowd scenes seem to work really well. It seems to work well for like background characters in huge scenes, and so on. I'm curious also to see, we see the Discord community, people are creating a lot of different fun stuff, and as we're moving along and we will add more and more types of motion in there, you can really see that this might be really fun to work with. I hope
it is.
Yeah, I just see it as like your in-game cinematics and stuff too, right? Where it's like it doesn't have to be out of the experience. You already have your world. So if you're trying to do like cool cutscenes or transitions to a new part of the game, like you can just, right, I'm going to pop my characters in, run some animations to get them to the next scene, and then now you have this really cool like fly through or something,
Yeah, sure. And also, for hero characters or these close-up scenes, some people are already using like metahumans, metahuman animator. Maybe if you have the money, you would buy like a cheap mocap studio suit, and you can do your kind of the close-up shots, dialogue shots. You can do with other types of methods, but if you want to have like this huge scene where people are running, or you don't have the space, you need the space for that. That's difficult to do even in a big mocap studio. You can't do like 30 meters runs or something like that. That's but if you're using Motorica, you have an unlimited play area.
I think one of the things working now. Oh, sorry.
No, I just.
So you guys know
I just want to mention real quick. Okay, I'll mention real quick. Sorry. I noticed one thing when Theodore, when you did your representation. I actually remember when I did this shot, I had trouble because I wanted to make them stand in place, and I did this, which was obviously wrong. Now I notice. So the way I did it was I forced the root log. I didn't notice this was a thing. So yeah, that's good to know. I guess that works better. Yeah. I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, these are all like the different solutions I think people will find, and we know there are plugins outside that can be worked in to make it position in one way, and we've seen plugins that can help looping it as well. One thing that's pretty cool now at UFX, where I'm working at the moment, we also have been trying and working a lot with crowds and crowd simulations, and then of course you're very much in the situation where you don't want everyone to walk the same way, of course, and then you can go into like a big library and look, but then you might just have a few that will work, and then you'll have like 3 different animation cycles that's working, that where people are like, if you really look at it, you see like, these are just 3 animations, while here you can do like hundreds, and everyone will do it slightly different. Everyone will have like their own take on it, and you can adjust like this area, maybe they're walking differently because the terrain is different. So in working with these big scenes, it's already very helpful to do this and to have this tool. So I'm like, I think in general, as more different motions and animations are put into it, it's going to be even better. But already with this, it's so many different use cases, and we haven't really thought of all yet.
Great. I think thank you so much for joining this show. I think it's really, it has been so fun working with you and kind of see how you're working and so on. I think we should probably move on to the next, unless there are questions from
Yeah, sure.
that comes up in this category. Do you find anything, Amanda?
Let's see. Yeah, they were asking if you plan to expand your animation training set, and it sounded like that's on the horizon. You kind of alluded to that there may be more coming.
Yeah.
All right.
That's for sure.
And then, awesome. And then, yeah, I think, well, I guess before we dive into the next one, I would at least like to go ahead and welcome Gustav, who has arrived. And so he's also from the Motorica team and a lot of does a lot of the research and development with you all, and has just landed his flight and wanted to be here and join and say hello to everyone. So if you have questions for on that side, we also have Gustav. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Yes, I'll be here. If there are any questions relevant to the machine learning bits that I can answer, I will try.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad you could make it, and we'll give Chad a moment to maybe think on some of those while we keep moving along. Is it Tio? I think you had some more to share.
Yeah, I think the next part is sorry, I can share a bit about how development of the plugin went. So from a more high-level perspective, from a more software engineering perspective, and some decisions I made along the way, why I made them, and hopefully to help anyone else that might be diving into making a plugin, especially an editor plugin where you want it to be integrated with the Unreal Editor and for it to look and feel as much as possible to Unreal Engine. So I will show something a bit later. For now, I'm just going to talk a bit about C++ and blueprints. So this is a very common topic in Unreal Engine. Do you go for C++? Do you go for blueprints? And I can share my take on this, right? So the facts are that for the most part, like 99%, if not 100 of the plugin is in C++. Reasons why I went for C++ are primarily version control. So it's much easier to create text files and compare them, and then have a repository, let's say on Git, where you do your version control. So if you mess something up, you can more easily preview the changes in text format, roll back changes, or just branch out into something else. And it's easy because also the differences between the files are smaller. Whereas assets or blueprints, they get compiled into binary format. So comparison, for the most part, is the entire size of the file. So if you have many changes like this happening, you will kind of clutter your repository over time, which can maybe slow down cloning, or if you have to deal with moving between branches, let's say, and you need to sync things. So version control is one. Second of all, I wanted essentially the flexibility of the programming language. For example, C++ has templates, which came in very handy when I was building the part of the system that interacts with the server over HTTP. So communication with the API has its own, you would normally send an HTTP request, but this request needs some kind of data, and this data needs to be formatted, let's say, in JSON, but before this data is formatted in JSON, you have just pure C++ somewhere else in the engine, so you need to parse it into a HTTP-friendly format. And then when the server responds, if you want to do error handling, or if there were no errors, then you have to parse this data back that you got from the server. A lot of the functionality is very common, regardless of which API endpoint you're communicating with over the internet. So abstracting this common functionality using C++ templates for me was quite handy, and is, for me at least, one point why I would go for C++ again. And you can probably do something similar using blueprints as well, using class hierarchies, for example, or parent-child blueprints. Another thing, I suppose, is that there was in general just no need for blueprints from our sort of brainstorming and research, because this is mostly like a content creation, like a playground. So it's not intended now, at least, to be plugged into a game or for you to do any kind of scripting to generate your animations. Depending on need, we might develop something in the future, but for now it's mainly interacting with the interface, playing around with the timeline, and there was practically no need for blueprints. So kind of removing that part from from my thinking during development essentially opens up room. I don't need to think about blueprints. I can just focus on C++. So this has been also helpful. And lastly, but very, very important, is that you have full access to the code base of Unreal Engine. So some things may not be exposed in blueprints. So in C++, you can directly access certain functions or certain variables that you would otherwise not have in blueprints. Or maybe you need to make your own wrapper and then expose it and then use it in blueprints, which is a bit weird if you can just do it in C++ already. So C++ has been handy for this, yes. And also, I suppose less spaghetti, because I have seen spaghetti in blueprints. For me, it's easier to just do it in text. There is still a chance of spaghetti code, but spaghetti codes and spaghetti blueprints, at least it's one layer of spaghetti, not two. So this is essentially my main choice between C++ and blueprints. But I have tried blueprints a bit, and I will show something now. I'll bring up a blog or a set of tutorials that I refer to when dealing with the UI. So in this case, I'm going to give a shout out to Ben UI. He has a very nice website with quite a few tutorials on all things Unreal. So he covers user widgets, UMG, Slate, C++, delegates. He covers other things like uProperties, the uObjects system. So it's a really nice place where you can learn quite a lot of things. And when I was dealing with coming up with a sort of high-level architecture of the plugin, I went here, I found this place, read through the tutorials and figure out some kind of an approach where I could, for example, combine C++ as a sort of base for my UI, and then try and use UMG for laying it out and making it pretty, changing font sizes, and making it quick, make the user interface designing a quick process so that you could immediately see as you move things around. And this worked initially, but in practice over time we realized that also a more Unreal Engine look and feel might look better, because this is a plugin that's integrating within the engine. It has this asset editor, it has these tabs, so it made the most sense to kind of keep it more professional and looking like Unreal Engine. So after we kind of identified this, I would go back in C++, skim around the code base of Unreal Engine, see what classes they use, how they use them, and get familiar with Slate, which is the underlying UI framework that UMG is built upon. So I wanted to go low level. This gives you, again, full flexibility and control over the UI. It is a bit slow to work with because every change you make, you need to recompile and go back in the editor, see if it's good or bad. And, if it's not, you don't like it, then you need to go back to your IDE, Visual Studio Writer, modify Slate, recompile, go back in the engine. So this process can be a bit slow, but still the cool part is you can reuse Unreal Engine classes, so like buttons. And for example, for the newer version of Motorica.ai, this style browser that I'm showing, under the hood, it is built upon the classes you responsible for making this outliner. It does not behave the same. I did modify some things. I added some of my own features. So for example, this checkbox is not normally in the style browser, but it is very similar to what you would see here in this like little eye icon, where you can sort of hide the objects in the scene. So I took inspiration from this by reading the code, debugging a bit, and seeing if I can kind of mimic this myself. And this is how I got these checkboxes to appear, for example. So look as much as possible into the engine if you want to go very, very, very fine-grained in in this sort of editor tooling. And that's for UI. And one other thing I would like to mention is actually, before I get to that, I can share a few pictures or images of how we sort of came up with the design of the UI. So in the beginning, I sat down with Simon and we had a few rounds of discussing how should things look like. Let's make a mock-up and sort of pin down what we want the plugin to look like before we get into the development, because it's easy to change some images in Photoshop. It's not so easy to spend time developing it and then have to go back, refactor or delete, remove things. We wanted to spare some time of development by just planning ahead. And we came up with these ideas. So for example, we were wondering, do you want a menu item or do you want a button in the level editor? This wasn't such a big question, so we just stuck with this button in the level editor. We might move it so we don't clutter it, because if everyone puts their buttons there, then we just have one big toolbar in the main level editor window of Unreal Engine. But going afterwards, okay, what UI elements do we need? What major panels do we need? For example, you can see in the middle 5, this is like the viewport. It's going to be big, it needs to have quite a bit of space, it needs to be visible. But we also sort of identified other panels that we can expose to users for essentially enabling these workflows that we think people would go through, like logging in, generating an animation, saving it, previewing it, etc. And this is just a bit of a show for ViewMG. So I after we kind of blocked out this version, I went in, I did in C++ the framework for opening this asset editor and spawning these tabs, and the content of these tabs, how they look like. This is what I originally tried doing in UMG. And for example, in Unreal Engine, currently the style mixer is in UMG. We're probably going to move away from this. We're going to clean that up. But this is still parts of the initial development stages of the plugin. So then we did some iterations on, for example, how the login form look like. Do we want people to enter it here, or is it going to be a setting? And it became a setting in Unreal Engine of the plugin that you configure for your project and forget. We, for example, planned around how the style boxes look like. Should they have an image? Should they have a preview animation? And depending on also technical constraints, for example, it was difficult to get GIFs to play back without doing some further coding. So we decided to just stick an image for the beginning. It got the job done. Doesn't seem to be an issue. But one day we might add previewing your styles as well, so that you can easily see how a style looks like without having to regenerate for each and every style. And yeah, these are just some of the other panels. Some maybe never came in there. The style mixer, we had a few rounds of, for example, having this slider, or maybe having sort of vertical bars that you configure. There was an interesting idea that I think was inspired by MetaHuman's implementation, where you plug in, let's say, 3 styles, and you have like this handle in the middle that you drag around to kind of mix. But we didn't implement it. We kind of went for a more simpler route, because it was just not clear what would be useful as we were trying to figure out the workflows. And yeah, there were some other bits that some things made it in, some things did not make it in. But for the most part, everything is iterated, and this is not how the engine, the plugin looks now, and it's definitely not how it will look in a month or 2 or 3. Right. And the next part is a bit more into the core of the engine. In the core of the plugin, and how we approach developing features and decoupling them. So for example, you have this keyframe mode, but you also have this preset mode. Each mode has its own set of tools that you want to expose to users. So in the keyframe mode, you want users to be able to keyframe in the timeline. But in the preset mode, you don't need that. You only need a tab with the presets. But these presets should not appear when you're keyframing custom motion. So we decided to take on logical separation into modes, and keep features, sets of features isolated, and only bring up the tools that are needed for that specific set of features or mode. And for example, this would make it easy. If we want to add dance styles, we will just add another mode, dance mode. Under the hood, on the programming side, it would be relatively easy to implement because things are decoupled nicely. So this has been a huge gain in code maintenance, essentially. And I did have to refactor this for maybe 2-3 weeks to set this up initially. And a major reason why it took this much, I would make another shout out here now, is Ryan Schmidt. I think he's still working at Epic Games. He has spent time making the 3D modeling tools that we see in the level editor. So specifically these modeling tools here. It's quite an interesting challenge if you want to implement this. How do you expose these settings for each tool, and how do they interact with objects? Do you even want to enable this at runtime? If you make a game and you want to edit things in there. He has spent time developing a very nice framework, which I am using essentially for a lot of the core of the plugin, and this is the interactive tools framework. He has made very nice blogs about this. There are 2 blogs. One is for 4.26. This is probably the most useful because it covers a lot of the background and why this framework was needed. And in Unreal Engine 5, there have been some modifications to improve and expand the flexibility of this framework, and it's just still being updated. I see on GitHub that there are frequent updates to the code base here. So if you want to approach building a plugin that's full of features and functionality, this might really help. And this is also what I used to create this gizmo here, which you might have noticed that it's not the same gizmo that you have in the level editor. It's not this type of gizmo. And one difference is that this gizmo cannot be used in a game, but the other one is a runtime module. So in principle, you can implement the functionality of moving objects around, just as in Motoric Studio, the viewport. You can do it in your own game as well. So it's pretty cool. I definitely suggest you to read these blogs. They're great. And yeah, I can probably ramble more, but I would now stop. And if there are maybe any questions as well. Thanks for
I think everyone, we're so happy to have Theo and diving into all these things. It's been such a pleasure, and yeah, it's amazing what you can do within the Unreal Editor, and all the ins and outs of it.
And it's great that it's on Git as well, because I have spent a lot of time just digging through the code base. It's really nice that it's available.
Yeah. So I think we have some future work, and I know some people on Discord might be interested in what's coming up. So just to have some time for that, and also since we have Gustav here, we should really spend the time for anyone interested in this deep knowledge about machine learning and generative AI. So yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, do you want to show off what you've got, and then we can just load up on some Q&A at the end?
Sure. So now I'm hoping my screen share is working here. Tell me if it isn't. Yeah, right. So here is something that we talked about before, is that larger studios really want to fine-tune our model on their own data. And let's see if this works here. Right, so here is what typically comes into the Motorica. It's like a trajectory. It's totally synthetic here. It gets imported to our cloud service, and we will generate animation. Now you have seen this so many times. But this is what it looks like in our original data set. Like I think it's the male style or something like that. But if you record some extra mocap data, like in this sequence, I recorded an actor doing like a ape guy style, and we sent that data to Motorica, and we trained the model a little bit longer. And now when we're generating from the exact same path, you can really see that the new style has taken effect, and the animations that are synthesized are now from this new part of the data that wasn't in the original model. So this is something that we're now exploring together with game studios and so on, how we can work with that, because if you're working with a big studio, the animation style is really, really important. Like it's part of the identity of the studio. It's really part of the game, and every mocap supervisor or animation supervisor will have their own ideas of what is a good style. So that is something that we're working on. Yeah.
Just so I'm with, because when I'm with, not with it, I suspect some might not be as well. You basically can feed in one, like a recording of your own, and then you can get it to generate multiple different ape man versions running and doing these motions.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we had, in the example I showed, we maybe recorded, say, 5 minutes of mocap, which was just like very, yeah, thanks for pointing it out. I think I was a bit too fast
it's
there.
Not hours and hours of this each 5 minutes put into the existing model, and then it's out like, oh, now I'm improvising Monkey Man stunts over here.
Yeah, and you provided like 5 minutes of unstructured motion, and then we trained the model for maybe 15 minutes or so, and then it's like you get your own style in our style browser. It's like you get your own style there, and you can generate tons of motion in different for different trajectories. Then after that, I think something that has felt a little bit limiting in the style mixing is that it's kind of 50-50 mixing between styles. We can see here in this example where we are mixing different body parts. So if you choose the upper body to have like an aiming style and the lower body to have an injured style, you'll get, you can combine the style mixing more on the body parts. And I think this is also something that is pretty useful for a lot of use cases. Right here are some examples of that.
So is that something folks can leverage now, or it's just this is sort of exploration and where you're seeing the tool going?
Yeah, it's where the tool is going. And then I think the last part that I wanted to show also was the motion matching work that we are doing now. So maybe Dan, if you can share that video, I will go into those details. Let's see here. Right. So what you're seeing here is that motion matching is something that it's in beta now in Unreal, so it's not fully developed. It's kind of a new mode that's coming out, but it's something that high-end studios really want to have in their games, because it produces much more realistic animations than the typical ALS or advanced locomotion system that many people are using. So here you need really a big database of different motion to power the motion matching system. And I think a power of Motorica is that we can just, like, with a single click, we can generate tons of animations, and then you can feed these animations into the motion matching system, and then you have your in-game animations like this is like I think I generated about 100 or 150 animations for these trajectories in like half an hour or something like that. And then when you're done, you can use those in game. And I'm really curious, like it's been super fun to talk with the motion matching team at Epic and look where they're heading. And I can see some really good synergies coming out of this. So that's kind of the last point that I wanted to make here about future work. And then of course, like we're gonna move into different motion categories. Like you've already seen our work on dance synthesis and gesture synthesis, and you know we see a lot of interest there also, like powering NPCs and so on. So yeah, I think this kind of rounds off kind of what we had to share. So yeah,
a lot of really cool work. Yeah, I think we're all blown away by what you've all been able to make. Go ahead.
Just a quick mention, speaking of the styles and such, because there's a lot of opinions. If you have opinions and thoughts and feature ideas, feel free to join on the Discord, because we're listening. We're taking in a lot and progressively getting there, but there's a lot of good ideas. Like people have so many ideas and we're like amazed by that. And hopefully we can get everything in there, but one piece at a time. But your way to get your ideas into it, join the Discord and we'll track those ideas better.
Awesome. Yeah, we dropped a link in and we can rebump it too. Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, I'm just like, I want to kind of end off with, because there's a lot of talk now in this space, like on animation synthesis around, should you use, like as we are doing, having like single styles? Don't you want kind of a system where you can just text prompt, like give me this or that, this animation? And the system will generate it for you, because that's what we're seeing like in image synthesis, like in image generation fields and so on. So, and I'm kind of bouncing this a little bit to Gustav here, because I feel that you should you should get the opportunity to speak a little bit about the future of generative AI and where we're moving in this field and what we're seeing next on the next SIGGRAPH paper. Is that okay, Amanda? That we spend...
Yeah, I mean, paper isn't written yet, so I can't really tell you what will be in there. But I think it's a very interesting thing to think about this. You know, how with all these generative AI tools, like how we're going to interact with them. What affordances will they provide? Like providing text as an input. There are certain things you maybe can realize easily there, but there are certain other parts or aspects that are maybe easier to control with a slider or something than it is to express those sliding values using proper vocabulary and getting a model to listen to you, if that makes sense, right? So I would say it's really, I think a good model to look at here for what's going to happen in the motion space is what is happening already in image and audio and other spaces that have sort of more data and therefore are perhaps a little bit further ahead in there, right? There are lots of different tools that all can use generative AI, right? You can use it text to generate an image from scratch, or you can use text to sort of regenerate parts of the image, and so on and so forth. Or you can use generative AI to outpaint or inpaint without necessarily having a text prompt. So I think all of these in terms of I think like text is super cool, but it's not the only thing that I think is happening in this space, and it's not the only way that we will be interfacing with these systems. Yep, short thought bouncing that ball back to you, basically.
Yeah, and if we get any more questions, like in the
I've got a few
channel,
here if you're ready for it.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we've done a lot of these. This locomotion has to do with walking or running, but is there a world where we start leveraging more like jumping or vaulting over objects and have some control over those animations as well?
Yes, I think we're really excited about this. I think what we need here is to have more scene understanding. So the more we know about the scene, the better. And if like Unreal can provide us with information that this is a chair or this is like a staircase or something like that, then we can use that information to train our AI models to kind of adapt to the context of the animation. And I think that is something that needs to be happening. I don't know, Gustav, what do you say? Is there any other ends to that? Because this is really something that many people want, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my belief is basically I think the models can handle it if you have a good way of interfacing with it. What you will need, of course, is to have some way of connecting that to your data as well. So you would need jumping, vaulting, whatever in your data, and you need to identify sort of when to connect what you learned from the data with the proper point in the environment or whatever, right? I mean, we've done some preliminary experiments that show that if you have perception of the scene around you, you can indeed respond to it. It's so then it's more about how do you interface that with Unreal so that's easy for people, and how do you then record the motion and make that connection happen.
I think also another aspect of it is that there are another line of research going on in the animation industry, which is about like physics-based animations, where you have machine learning systems that learns to react in different ways. And I think in the future we will kind of see a merge between these, intelligent ragdolls, or what you call them, with the kind of systems which we are using, which are based on like just seeing a lot of human data, but doesn't know anything about physics.
Yeah,
that was actually one of the chat's next question too.
Right, yeah, but so one thing that maybe can be said here, right, is that different types of motion is more or less physics constrained, or physics is more or less informative about different things that we do. Like when gesturing was mentioned, I don't think there's, a physics engineer is not going to tell you how we gesture as humans, whereas how we vault and things like that, there's a lot more information there. So, and then I think the other thing is that I think research in that space or merging these things is less mature now, right? A lot of people are jumping on the generative AI hype train in some sense. But if you want to do research connecting these two, well, then you have to have a good physics engine and a good generative AI understanding. So I think sort of that connection is going to come, or is coming a little bit later because of that. But we're seeing the first research papers doing that. So I think the benefits that can be gained from that, they're going to make it into the kinds of tools that we develop here before too long.
Exciting time. I guess on that note, before maybe we get to physics and these generative AI systems speaking to each other, it seems they're asking if there might be a means to, not only animate like the trajectory, but could they potentially animate the styles? And so that way they could sort of blend between certain styles in part of that, like, oh, hey, for this loop, I want them to be more injured, but then they kind of get it together and bolt down the hallway,
Yes, so this
like
we can really say, we can really say here that this is in not the far future, but in the very near future, because our models can already do this. It's more of an implementation question to be able to keyframe that I want this style on these frames, and it's going to transition to another style and so on. So I think that will be really fun to see how people can maybe elaborate more on the animations that way.
I think that sounds perfect. There we go. Now you have it, folks. When you have all these folks going in and downloading your plugin, as was evidenced by earlier today. They're wondering, when are we going to see a 5.3 plugin soon?
Okay, I can say that it works and it doesn't crash on 5.3. So technically, it seems robust to actually be shipped on 5.3. So at this point, it's a matter of just picking a release date for the plugin. And this is something that we need to identify clearly internally. And once that's out, we will just make an announcement with the plugin, the new sort of binaries that would be uploaded, and everyone will be able to download. So it is, in a sense, ready. And it's just kind of waiting to leave the house.
Perfect. There we have it. Well, it sounds like you could still use the current plugin and it's still work. Is there ability to, I know we've kind of danced around a lot of these topics, so maybe we've sort of covered it already, but is there the ability, once they take this data, to then start layering in like keyframes over it, so you manually customize certain things the way you would with, classic mocap data?
Yeah, I've spoken to the animation team at Epic, and if I understand it correctly, like layered animation and baking to control rig and then animating on top of that. I don't know if it might already be in Unreal. If it's not, it's I think what is happening is that more and more animation functionality goes into Unreal now. And it's really nice to see that happening. So eventually people might be using only Unreal for many animation purposes.
Well, I think that just serves your library as a bigger set, right? Somebody can create the foundation. If it's not 100% what they're looking for, then you just sort of use UE to make those final adjustments in your scene or things like that. And then you're done.
Yeah. So that's kind of a traditional workflow that is really powerful. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we've come to the end of our list of questions. People were asking, now that they've downloaded it and played with it, where's the best place to ask questions and send feedback? And it sounds like your Discord, which we've plugged a couple of times in chat. We'll make sure to do again. But I know there's also been a lot of questions about pricing and licensing. It sounds like the best way is just visit your website and to contact you about that.
Yeah, sure. And reach out on Discord. I know we haven't been too reactive about it because it's still a balance between we don't have any paid version of this yet. It's kind of in an open free beta, but it's not for non-commercial use. But we're trying to strike a balance here because we're recording our own data and we want to pay these top actors for their time, of course, and mocap is really, really expensive. So even though we want to put it out actually for free or for as less amount of money as possible, we kind of need to strike that balance to kind of keep developing the data set, keep developing the code and bringing more and more functionality into it. So we will find a good pricing model that would fit both the kind of the personal use, the indies, and the more solvent studios.
And if you have current projects, which there are multiple people who have had, reach out and we'll look into what solutions might fit you specifically as we're figuring this whole thing out.
Yes.
Well, there you go. So they can play with it right now. It's free to use in general, but then if you're going into larger commercial projects, it's a discussion away. So well, awesome. Is there anything else you all want to leave folks with? these tools are really powerful, and I think it's a testament, right? Adam, you said you're not an animator, that's not your thing, but you were able to make an awesome tutorial or a trailer with no experience in that space. And so I think that's just again, like I said, a testament to your tools and what you're able to make and how accessible you're making more animations and, all of these data sets and things like that. So it's very cool.
Yeah, I think the end thing here would be like, please send us your ideas about what kind of things you would like to see on the Discord, like what type of data should we record, what genres of motion are mostly important to your projects. Is dance interesting? Do you want more gesturing or fighting or right, but
Came up
also
a couple times in chat.
yeah, but maybe there are other maybe there are other categories that could be fun to explore that are less explored. Just reach out, and it's just fun to explore where this is going.
Well, very cool. Well, make sure to check out Motorica.ai and explore all their tools and try making your own animations, and let us know how it goes. Drop in their Discord, jump in our forums, and we're searching for all the feedback. Love to hear how it's going, see what you're working on. And thank you to you all for coming and sharing this. This has been an absolute treat. You've got a lot of really cool projects going on here, and I'm excited to see what you continue to build in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, you all have a wonderful day, thank you, or evening. I know it's late for some of you for a chat. Thanks for dropping by and hanging out with us and asking all kinds of questions. Again, find them at Motorica.ai and drop in their Discord and hang out. So we will see you all next week. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Bye.